Hi everyone, welcome back to the Property Finance Podcast. So today I want to talk about the true cost of bridging finance and development finance, because inevitably we always get asked this question whenever a client comes to us or whenever I do a talk, or actually off the back of some of these podcast episodes, which is, what is the true cost of bridging and development? Because a lot of the time people will look at sort of the breakdown of decision in principle and AIPs that we do, and they'll go, oh, right, okay, I can see there's 2% arrangement fees here. I can see that there's an interest rate of 12% per annum. Right, okay, that one looks better than this one over here that's 2% arrangement fee and 13% per annum. But where it kind of comes into the true cost is when you start looking at things like, is there an application fee? So some lenders might charge £250, £300 as an application fee. There might be a commitment fee if you're talking about development finance. So for example, we've got a development loan at the moment. It's about £1 million worth of borrowing and the commitment fee is £5,000. Well, that's got to be paid upfront before anything happens. You've then got the cost of valuation and QSs, because depending on the lender that you go to, you may go to a bridging lender. They might be happy with an AVM, which might cost 50 quid, for example, or there might be an AVM that's a couple hundred quid, or they might be happy with just a one sheet valuation, which again might be 500 quid. You might go to another bridging lender, all of a sudden they want a full RICS Red Book valuation, 1,500 quid. So again, if you're looking at £100,000 loan, and all of a sudden the difference between the valuation on one lender is £500 and one is £1,500, that's essentially 1% difference on that full sort of loan amount. So that comes into it as well. So then you've got potentially increased legal fees, because you might have a bridging lender or development lender who's happy with dual rep. That obviously is going to be cheaper than if, for example, you're paying for both sets of solicitors individually at two different firms. So it's little things like that that come in. We obviously mentioned QS fees earlier. Every QS is going to be different. Every lender's requirements for a QS is going to be different. You might go to one lender, for example, on a refurb. They might be happy with an internal asset manager. So that's potentially someone from the firm who will go out and will do the visits and everything else. They might be a couple of £100 every time they go and visit. You may go to another firm and all of a sudden they want a full-blown QS to come out, or a monitoring surveyor to come out, and all of a sudden you're talking about £1,000 a visit and £2,500 for an initial report. And all of these costs very, very quickly add up. And if you're talking about taking small bridging facilities of maybe £100,000, some of the differences here can add up to sort of pretty high percentages of that 100 grand. So, for example, we were mentioning earlier about valuation fees, legal fees, everything else. I mean, if you're talking about a £100,000 facility as well, the other thing is that some lenders may charge a 2% arrangement fee, but some may look at £100,000 and go, well, actually, we want to charge a minimum fee of X amount. And again, that pushes that percentage up. So when you sort of start calculating all of this out, the lenders who are sitting there at 2% arrangement fee, 12% per annum, yes, that looks good on the face of it, but actually it may be that a lender with a higher interest rate is actually going to be cheaper on the overall. So it's not about just comparing headline rate, it's about actually comparing all of the costs. And there are a lot. I mean, obviously we've mentioned legal fees, we've mentioned obviously getting potentially a quantity surveyor out, we've spoken about a valuer, we've got application fees, potentially commitment fees. You've then also got, if you move to the back end, you've also got the exit fees as well. So what is the exit fee or redemption fee that lender charges? Most of them will be 1% of gross loan. But again, is it on gross loan or is it on net loan? Again, that makes a difference. And when comparing the true cost of bridging, it's then also working out, and the true cost of development finance as well, it's, are these fees charged against the gross loan or are they charged against the net loan? Obviously, I've done a previous episode about the difference between gross and net. And obviously, it's significantly cheaper if they're charged against the net rather than the gross. So again, it's working those out. Then when you talk about the true cost of bridging in particular, all of the front end cost is irrelevant. Because one of the biggest things when it comes to bridging finance is actually what it's going to cost you on the exit. And that's if something goes wrong. So what are your extension fees? So for example, we've got a deal at the moment, which was actually a development deal. It's currently being refinanced. The refinance has taken a hell of a long time for reasons that none of us could have predicted. But what's happened is that every time we've had to go and ask for an extension off the development lender, it's another £6,500 grand. Plus they've bumped their interest up by 5% per annum. So it's gone from 11.52 up to 16.52. That's obviously having an impact on that as well. So when you talk about the true cost of finance, it's actually completely irrelevant what any of these lenders charge up front, because it's all about what they charge when things go wrong. We've got lenders who potentially will charge up to 5% as a default fee if you run over the term of a bridge. Now, obviously, if you're going and speaking to lenders and you're saying about, well, I want an extension, I want to take it a bit further, obviously they're going to be preferential to give you that extension rather than putting you on default interest and default fees. But you have to take those fees and costs into consideration. Now, we won't go to lenders who have those 5% fees. Obviously, they're on panel, but we won't use them. We will always use lenders who, as a rule of thumb, have kind of a grace period. Now, this isn't something that's promised or set in stone, but most of the lenders that we work with will give a grace period. So, for example, if you've got a 12-month term, refinance is going well or sales are going well, but you just need that extra month, most of them will give you that extra month. We've got one lender in particular who we use on development finance. They'll give 3 months. So no default, no extension fees, nothing like that. But if they give you a 12-month term, they will allow you up to 15 with no penalties. So that's quite nice to have. Not many lenders do that. But in terms of those grace periods, we've got quite a few who will allow sort of a week here, a month there, in order to let stuff go through. So when we talk about the true cost, forget almost to a certain degree about the cost front end. Obviously, you want to go with the lender who's cheapest front end, but if they're very, very expensive and very harsh at the back end, they're not really going to be worth going with, because inevitably there's always going to be a delay. There's always going to be something that goes wrong. There's always going to be something that pushes everything further down the road. So it's really, really key to understand that cost at the back end. So hopefully that's been helpful. It gives you a few little nuggets to have a look at, obviously, when you're analysing deals and looking at things and working out which lender you want to go with. But yeah, hopefully that comes in useful in the future. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening. Catch you on the next one.